Welcome to a live report with U.S. and Texas LawShield in Houston, Texas. I'm Sam Malone. Thank you, as always, for joining us on Facebook Live. Big story today obviously involves the now upgraded Hurricane Harvey and its path coming towards the great state of Texas, pretty much our backyard. Where exactly we'll go, we'll find out more, and we'll keep B-roll up of the satellite charts and everything, like the satellite maps. But it's a lot of people may end up leaving their homes. There's already been some voluntary evacuation calls from different county officials. Well, you're going to evacuate. What do you do with your guns? How do you store them? How do you move them? There's a lot of questions. As always, we get to independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield, Edwin Walker, and he joins us via Skype. Mr. Walker, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you, Sam?
Fantastic. High and dry right now. High and dry. I think the bad weather will probably start on Friday and then get worse on Saturday, if the weather prognosticators are correct. There's the B-roll. I'm going to ask Edwin a lot of questions. As always, jump in and join us with your questions and your comments right here on our Facebook page at U.S. LawShield. That's what you're watching us right now. Okay, here you go. Mr. Walker, question number one. You have to, let's say, it's a voluntary or forced evacuation, mandatory evacuation. And you are a gun collector, and you have a couple long guns. You got your, 30-06, you got your AR-15, you got your shotguns, you got a bunch of handguns. What should people do? What do you recommend they do when it comes to evacuating and their guns?
Well, obviously, whenever you are making plans to evacuate, you have to make a lot of tough choices about property you're going to take and property you're going to leave behind. And so just like with any other valuable piece of property, you're going to make that decision with your firearms. Now, a lot of people will evacuate with their firearms for safety reasons, and that's what we certainly advise people to do. And this points out the importance of having an LTC, because if you have an LTC, it gives you a lot more options than if you do not have an LTC. So take as many guns as you can with you. Guns are relatively small. They're not as small as, rings or watches, but they are much smaller than automobiles or televisions. Guns are a favorite of looters. Also, guns rust. If if you're in a place that you worry about being flooded, you may want to take the guns just to preserve them because of that. Take as many of your guns as you can. The ones that you have to leave, make sure they're secured. That they're secured either in a safe or they're secured maybe with gun locks so that nobody can use them in the event that they take them. Certainly make them more difficult to use. Right. Secure them in a safe or take them with you. Whenever you get to wherever you're going, if you're in the state of Texas, you're still governed by the laws of the state of Texas. Don't worry about one question that came up, especially whenever Hurricane Katrina came rolling through New Orleans, and of course Rita then came rolling through Texas. One of the big questions was, what can the government do to restrict your right to carry if they declare a state of emergency? And the thing about it is Texas has passed a law that says that the governor does not have the power to affect people's firearms rights in a state of emergency. So all the laws are still the same. The government can't take your right to have your firearm away because of a state of emergency. If you have a license, carry your handguns with you for safety reasons. There is going to be a lot of people looking to take advantage of people who are evacuating, so be wary of that. If you get to a hotel and you're wondering about their gun policy, just go with whatever is posted on the building, which means that if there is nothing posted on the building, then just simply leave it at that. Don't go asking management if it's okay if you bring your guns into your room. Just assume that it's okay, because you don't want to be the guy that ruins it for everybody else. Yeah, right. Because you had to go ask, and then they said, oh, well, gee, we never thought about that. I guess our policy is no, you can't bring your guns in.
Yeah, yes. So, as we say, Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield, as we say, you never want to be that guy, right? The guy who screws it up for everybody else. Now, let me ask you this.
Right. You do not want to be that guy.
No, you don't want to be. You evacuate, voluntary or mandatory. And you bring your rifles with you, and your hunting rifles and your shotguns and such, and your ARs. When you're pulling up at the hotel, are we under any legal obligation to cover up the guns? Let's say get a sheet and wrap up the guns, or are we okay legally just walking in, making 2 or 3 trips when you're carrying, guns like firewood?
Legally, you're not obligated to cover them up, especially with long guns. I mean, obviously, handguns you can conceal pretty readily, but also you don't want to draw attention to yourself. Like I said, you don't want to be that guy who ruins it for everybody else. So you want to be as discreet as possible. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't ask questions. Just assume that you're allowed to do it. Because the worst that can happen to you is you'll get, a criminal trespass charge if they choose to go that far. But I guarantee the police probably will be better occupied with other matters. So if you can't bring your guns in, make sure that they are not visible from your car. You don't want to have any luggage, packages, guns, or anything visible. Put them in your trunk, cover them up,
Right.
put them in cases. Don't allow them, like I said, don't allow them to be seen, and make frequent trips to check on your motor vehicle if you're worried about looters and thieves, because they are out there. They're evil people that want to take advantage of others. So just don't walk off from your car and leave it. Go check on it. If you stay in a motel where you have windows that face outward, try to get a parking spot right under your window so you can just look out your window and check on it. Obviously guns are very, very important, and they're very dangerous if they get in the hands of other individuals, but it's just like anything else. I mean, you wouldn't want a looter stealing your laptop or your watch or anything else. And so treat a gun as a very valuable piece of property that way. Don't be reckless about it. Don't be reckless about where you leave it. Be careful, watch out for it, keep it safe, and then eventually it may keep you safe.
Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield, joining us today on Facebook Live. Leave your questions, especially relating the weather situation going on. I want to talk, I got a couple more questions for you, but let me just say real quick, it's great to have U.S. and Texas LawShield when you are abiding and living by that great Second Amendment. And gosh forbid you ever need it, you have lawyers on call. How do you sign up? It's easy. Go to their website. There it is up on the screen, uslawshield.com, uslawshield.com, okay? You get, if you're doing an annual membership for 12 months, you only have to pay for 10. That's very cool. You get 2 free months when you sign up for an annual membership, uslawshield.com. Use the promo code SAM, S-A-M. Use the promo code SAM. Let me get back to independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield, Edwin Walker. You had opened up by saying, how great it is to have your license to carry, previously your concealed handgun license, because I tell people, get it. You never know when you'll need it. I think I know the answer to this, but what if someone says, Mr. Walker, I have to evacuate, and I want to get my license to carry as soon as possible. Can I get it in 5 hours, or can I get it in 10 hours?
No, you cannot. It is a process, and unfortunately, the people in charge of the process are bureaucrats. So we know that that's going to add additional time to it. So, if you get your LTC, you should have planned ahead. You won't be able to get it in a matter of hours, days, or even weeks. You have to take a class. You have to get your certificate for the class. You have to accumulate some other information, photographs, fingerprints. Right. You have to finish an online application. You have to submit that application. You have to hope that there's no hiccup in it, such as an arrest way back from 1975 that you forgot to report to the DPS, because in an odd bureaucratic twist of fate, even though the DPS knows everything about your criminal past, it's your responsibility to report it to them. And if you do not accurately report it to them, they will call you out on it, and they will delay your application. So even though they know what your criminal past is, you're still responsible for telling them, and they're going to jack you up if you don't tell them the truth. So I've seen people's applications held up for ridiculous things like that. So the DPS takes their own sweet time putting you through the process, and the application, the turnaround time now, I believe, is about 4 months.
Wow. So jump on it now. Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield. Getting back to...
Well, Sam, I don't want to interrupt you, but if you do wait till next week, the price of the application goes down to $40.
That's right. That was part of one of the bills that came out of Austin, was to lower the price and make it more affordable. And it shouldn't be very... Well, that's a whole nother Facebook Live of why it even costs that much to begin with. Let's get back to evacuations and hurricanes. Now, Mr. Walker, let's say I leave, right, and I come back, but my neighbor doesn't come back. I come back after 24 hours, and it's not too bad, but it's like a ghost town in my street. I bring my guns back. I move back into my house. But I hear noise next door at my neighbor's house, and he didn't return. Let's walk through from the legal aspect of, can I protect my neighbor's property with my handgun or rifle?
Yeah, and this is actually one of the more complex issues in Texas law. Let me adjust my seat. This is one of the more complex issues in Texas law because Texas is one of the few states that allows somebody to not only use force, but use deadly force, not only in the protection of their own property, but in the protection of a third party's property. And this is a very, very misunderstood application of the law. What you have to remember is that there are no presumptions. Now, whenever I say no presumptions, what that means is that whenever you're defending yourself or you're defending a third person, and you're doing it to prevent the imminent threat of a murder, a sexual assault, an aggravated sexual assault, an aggravated robbery, or an aggravated kidnapping, the law says that if you have a reasonable belief that that's occurring, then you're given the legal presumption that your use of deadly force was justified and was reasonable. And so that's a very, very important thing. And that was a change made in the law back in 2007. Well, those presumptions don't apply with regard to property. And so even though Texas law says you can use deadly force to defend property against a burglary, against arson, against theft during the nighttime, criminal mischief during the nighttime, it says that you can only do this if it is reasonable. If you have a reasonable belief that the property is being threatened and you have a reasonable belief that the property could not be protected through any other means. And so that is a very, very big deal because that would allow the jury to second guess you as to whether or not your use of deadly force was reasonable. It's not an automatic. Now, with regard to protecting third person's property, you're only allowed to protect third person's property under the same circumstances that you could protect your own, which, like I said, with regard to deadly force, that would be burglary. That would be burglary, arson, criminal mischief at night, theft at night, and there's some other conditions. You also have to believe that the crime committed against the property constituted a theft or criminal mischief that would allow you to use force, or a theft or criminal mischief at night that would allow you to use deadly force. And also, there are some other conditions. You can believe you either have to have a pre-existing duty to protect the property has to be the property of one of your close relatives, as in your child or your parent, or you can be defending your neighbor's property based upon an agreement between your neighbors that you'll protect each other's property. So that's probably the safest avenue. Get to know your neighbors, look out for your neighbors, and just have an agreement. It doesn't have to be a written agreement. Obviously, written agreements are better. They're more concrete. But just an understanding between your neighbors that, hey, it's okay if you defend my property if I'm not here. And so in that sort of circumstance, then yes, there's a very, very high likelihood that you would be not only justified, but even justified in using deadly force to defend your neighbor's property under those circumstances. Right. However, keep in mind that it's not an absolute position. It's not the same as if you were defending yourself against a robbery or an attempted murder. You're not going to get the same presumptions. You're probably not going to get the same scrutiny from the police. So it is something that you should not do cavalier. You should think about it very, very, very seriously before you use force, and especially deadly force, right, to protect a third person's property.
Edwin Walker.
So basically, in short, it's allowed, but it may not be wise.
Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield. So once again, a short recap answer is, if I heard it correct, if you think there's no other way to protect the property, right, your neighbors, and you go over and shoot a burglar, and you say that kind of allows the jury to second guess, oh, gosh, yeah. Wouldn't they say, hey, why don't you just call 911 and wait? What's the hurry? You know?
Right. And, it is, like I said, it is unfortunate. The world is full of people who want to take advantage of people who are victims of natural disasters. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I'm sure that there would be very little sympathy for somebody who was burglarizing a house of somebody who evacuated. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for yourself. and you may not want to put yourself in harm's way like that. Maybe you do want to call and wait for the authorities. Maybe you want to get as much information about the burglar, like how many there are, what they look like, what kind of car they were driving, that sort of thing. And basically, your use of deadly force against the burglar is kind of a route of last resort.
Wow. Edwin Walker with us, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield. This is why I say this every time. I'm learning stuff constantly when we have a chance to chat. This is why you need U.S. LawShield. This is why you got to sign up, go online, uslawshield.com, use the promo code SAM for an annual. There you go. You sign up for the annual membership, you get 2 months free.
Yeah, and Sam, I just want to add that anytime you're defending a third person or a third person's property, one of the things you always have to be wary of is what is the likelihood that you're going to make a mistake. For example, let's say that you do get back from the hurricane. Your neighbor has called a friend of his that lives one town over and said, hey, could you just go over to my house to make sure that I didn't lose power, or to check on my dog that I left, or my fish, or whatever. And he has the neighbor's permission to go in the house, but yet you come in and you start blasting away, and you wind up injuring an innocent person that was supposed to be there, but just because they were unfamiliar to you, you decided to take it upon yourself to do this. So that's always a very strong risk anytime you protect a third person's property. Now, obviously, if you come home and somebody's burglarizing your house, you have 100% perfect knowledge. You know whether or not there's supposed to be somebody in there. You know whether or not you know the person who's in there. And so you have a much better basis to use force or deadly force against that person. Whereas with a third party, your neighbor's property, there's that issue of...
You don't know. Yeah, if they ask Uncle Fred from Louisiana to come on over, you don't know Uncle Fred. Oh,
correct.
Wow, that's horrible. This is why we peel the onion with Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield. Chris wants to know, and this is good, during a mandatory evacuation, let's say, and we opened up with this, and you bring your guns, what if you're moved to another state, and maybe that state isn't as friendly, or maybe you don't have shelter and you have to go stay with your family in New York or California? Can you say, hey, I was leaving the flood, the hurricane, that's why I have my guns, Edwin? Is that a good defense?
No, that is not a good defense. It's still a free country. There's not mandatory evacuation to the re-education camps just yet. It's a lot like closing time. The police will say, we don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. So you won't be forcibly relocated to another state. Anytime you go somewhere, it is voluntary, and you will be forced to abide by the laws of that state. Again, another reason why you want to get your LTC, because, for example, for Oklahoma, for example, this is a very good example about how even our neighbors don't have the same laws that we do. Right. Oklahoma, in Oklahoma, if you have a license, you can do just about anything you want with your handgun. You can carry it openly, you can carry it concealed, you can carry it in your car, it can be loaded. It can be within reach. There are really no restrictions. Oklahoma is a lot like Texas in that respect with regard to somebody who has a license. However, somebody who does not have a license is very restricted. The laws are very different between Texas and Oklahoma whenever it comes to unlicensed individuals. If you take your gun, if you've evacuated with your gun, you're driving all the way to Oklahoma to get away from the storm, and you don't have a license, as soon as you cross that Red River, or actually I guess before you cross the Red River, you're going to have to take every handgun and every long gun out of your passenger compartment, unload them, and put them in the trunk of your car. And that's 180 degrees different than Texas law that says even without a license, you can carry loaded handguns and rifles in your passenger compartment. Handguns have to be not in plain view, but you can carry them. Oklahoma, complete opposite. Cannot carry them in your passenger compartment.
Wow. Edwin Walker with us as we watch Hurricane Harvey. It wasn't earlier. It's now a hurricane, and there may be evacuations. There are already some. Ben has an interesting note. If you ride out the hurricane in the hotel, and you bring your guns, and then they ban the guns because that guy says something, do you have any rights left, or do you have to, because it's private property, take your guns and get them out of the motel or hotel?
It is private property, so you do have to abide by the rules of private property. And One of the things that's different about private property than what we call statutory restrictions whenever it comes to license holders is that private property owners do have the ability to ban firearms from their entire property, including parking lots. Places that are off limits per statute, those, the places that we know of, like, we call them statutory gun-free zones, schools, courtrooms, sporting events, polling places, those areas, airports, those areas do not include parking lots. However, if a private property owner was to say, I don't want guns, period, on any part of my property, they do have the right to do that. So your choices are to either abide by their choice, find someplace else to stay, or just keep your mouth shut and go about your business and try not to get caught.
And real quick, one more. Edwin Walker, independent program attorney, U.S. and Texas LawShield. Obviously, if you're sent to a shelter, let's just say, Edwin, we're going to evacuate your area and we're going to move you to a Red Cross shelter, and it could be in a school, it could be in a gymnasium, wherever. The rules do not change, correct? They do not go, oh, it's a hurricane, bring your guns in. Normally, you can't bring your gun to school.
That's a fantastic point, Sam. You're absolutely right. If you do get evacuated to a shelter and that shelter happens to be property that is owned by a school district, then Texas Penal Code 4603 applies, and you can take your guns with you, but you just have to leave them in your car, cannot bring them into the building. Otherwise, you will be committing a felony.
And so the excuse is, but it's not a school. It's a Red Cross shelter now. It was a school, earlier, but now it's a Red Cross shelter. That's not an excuse. It's still a school. Those rules still apply for licensed carry holders.
That's correct. If it's a building owned by an ISD, then it is a school 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Excellent. Man, I tell you, you make us smarter every time you visit. Edwin Walker, who's an independent program attorney with U.S. and Texas LawShield. Remember, sign up now. Go online now. Put that offer up there. This is great. You get 2 free months when you sign up for an annual membership with U.S. LawShield. Use the website, uslawshield.com. Promo code, that's easy. The online code is SAM, S-A-M. Mr. Walker, as always, thank you for taking time to join us and answering all these valuable questions as we get ready for the hurricane to hit the Gulf Coast area of Texas.
Thanks, Sam. It's always great to be here.
You got it. And if you all tuned in midway, don't worry about it. It starts on over, and all your questions can be answered. Thank you so much for spending time with us on our Facebook Live session for U.S. and Texas LawShield. At the Houston, Texas News Desk, I'm Sam Malone.